Okay, then welcome to the bits of the keyring maintainers. Noodles and Gunnar will share their bits. Applause.
Thanks. There shouldn't be anything earth-shattering in this talk, but I think it's important that the team stand up and say hello and give you an opportunity to know what we've been working on, what we're currently thinking about, ask us some questions at the end. This shouldn't be a long talk, so hopefully there'll be time for discussion. If you're generally interested in PGP-related things, there is a talk this afternoon from one of the Sequoia PGP maintainers. They are working on an implementation of PGP in Rust. They are doing a lot of good work in terms of driving the V5 specification for PGP and generally updating the RFC to represent both the modern world and reality. So that's worth attending. It's at 2 o'clock this afternoon in Dreamy, the big room. Also, if you're interested in Web of Trust strings, Gunnar has a session tomorrow morning. That's it.
Sound is lost, so
is it off?
No, they lost the connection.
Use this instead. If you're interested in Web of Trust things, Gunnar is doing a presentation on Web of Trust things tomorrow at 10 o'clock, again in Dreeny, the big room. So PGP stuff is happening this time. Who are we? We are 3 core people. That's Gunnar, that's John Sullivan, who unfortunately couldn't be here for DebConf, myself. We also have DKG, who is our resident expert. We go and bug him with PGP-related questions when we have them, and he occasionally comes in and says, hey, we should do this thing, and then makes them happen, which is good. What do we actually do? Our primary role is that we manage the keyrings that are used by the OpenPGP keyrings that are used by various pieces of the project infrastructure. That's primarily the keyrings for Debian maintainers, Debian developers, both the uploading and non-uploading types. There are a couple of other keyrings in Debian that we do not generally have direct involvement with. Debian contributors who have guest accounts on Porter machines have a keyring that is maintained by DSA, and the archive keyrings we don't manage, right? So the release team manage their own keys for signing archives and whatever. That's not something we take anything to do with. The requests for an addition to any of these keyrings are driven from outside the team, right? We don't make a decision about when a key should be added. We will make some technical decisions on the key about whether or not we'll accept it, but the actual request to add a key comes from usually front desk or the Debian account managers. We do replacement requests, and replacement requests when you want to replace your key within the keyring can either come from you. If your old key is still perfectly good and you have access to it and you're moving to a new key for some reason, then we can accept a request from you. If you have lost your key, it is considered compromised, then the request needs to come from another DD, just so that we have a trust path back to someone who's in the active keyring. We have a very hacky collection of scripts to aid the curation of our keyring. We are in discussions with some of the Sequoia folk and both internally about how they can be less hacky, but by and large they do a bunch of the automated checking work for us. But we always fall back to a manual eyeball check at the end. So if you see things like the lag of keys getting added or updates being folded in, it's because there's always that manual check at the end. And you could say, hey, you should be able to script all of that, and yes, you're right, we should be able to script all of that, but we have definitely found bugs in GPG over the years where the manual eyeball check have saved us from, ending up with huge keys in the keyring because things have got added, or in some cases people adding UIDs that were not valid and shouldn't be accepted in. So there's always going to be that manual eyeball check, but we try and automate away as much of the other work as possible. But we push a keyring once a month, and I think I did the stats recently. I got nerd sniped into it on Debian Private when someone complained about our update cadence. We have done an update every month, I think, since 2017. So we've done 5 years.
5 years consistently. Since we are 3 people in the team, I guess.
Yeah, and the 3 people in the team thing has really helped with that. So we made a concerted effort when we got John on board that we now rotate the work. So every month it's a different person does it, so that the team all regularly do a push of the keyring update, right? So all of us do this. we're around to help. Sometimes we swap shifts and whatever, but generally it's one of us, the next of us, and then the next of us. So everyone's done it within the last 3 months.
Most likely, the last day of DebConf, you will see me hiding for an hour or something like that, because it's the proper day of the month and it's my turn.
Yeah. So that's what we do. Not a lot has changed. Well, I originally thought nothing had changed since last time, and then I went and thought about it. Two things, right? One is, to get into the Debian Keyring, Debian maintainers need a signature from a DD, right? We have a lower bar of entry for DMs. We'd love to say 2 signatures, but we understand that DM is supposed to be a lower bar of getting more formally involved with Debian, so we've never increased that. More signatures are always good.
Although, of course, if you are a DM and you apply for DD, your key can just be migrated, even though it doesn't have the needed number of signatures that would be required otherwise. I mean, we do have these kind of human bits are those that don't let us automate everything.
Yeah, and there is some checks about that, I think, even in the NM process, about making sure that there are the signatures. DDs need 2. Obviously, if you can't travel, if you can't go to things like DebConf, if the world is shut down because there's a pandemic, getting signatures is not only tricky but risky. So we had conversations basically with front desk mostly, about how do we allow new project members to come into the project when we can't meet up and do signatures without sacrificing our trust path. And what we came down to was, really what we're trying to validate in that case is consistent use of an identity. That's what the project cares about, right? What we do when we tie you to a key is about consistent use of an identity, such that we trust that when you do an upload today, it's the same person who did an upload 6 months ago, and that is a consistent use of an identity. And for the purposes of getting into Debian, we decided that a key endorsement was sufficient. Now, that is not I have strictly verified the fingerprint on this key. There is no marker that goes on the key itself. But from a project point of view, in the new members interface, a project member can come and say, I have consistently interacted with this person with signatures from the key that is suggested here, and I believe that it is the same entity I have been involved with over time, and approve them, right? So I have interacted with this identity endorsement rather than a full cryptographic endorsement. And for the purposes of Debian and getting people into the project, we decided that was an acceptable risk profile. It's not an acceptable risk profile for a key replacement, right? Because that actually means that you could substitute someone else in. And I think that we need to have a thought about how we do that and this has been a problem in the past, how do you get remote Debian people into Debian, right? People who are in areas where they can't easily meet someone else to sign their key, they can't easily go to a conference. I mean, DebConf bursaries have helped a lot in spreading that, but is there something we can do that is a more scalable thing for getting people in? I think endorsements isn't a bad way, but it does still leave that problem about replacements, because to get the equivalent trust in the replacement, you'd be talking about a lengthy period of months of use of the new key in context that would then mean that you would feel you could endorse the key enough to do the replacement. And if you've lost your key, that suddenly means there's 6 months of stuff you can't do in Debian the same way.
Of course, it works for replacements as long as it's a planned replacement where there's a period of time you have both keys working.
Yeah.
But if my laptop gets stolen, I generate a new key, and I'm stuck in Mexico and there's no DDs around, well...
Yeah. The other thing we did, and I say we, DKG did all of the heavy lifting on this, is we fully integrated DN and WKD into our workflow. I can't read WKD without thinking about a UK Alcopop. WKD is the web-based key
WKD
director?
is web-based, Dane is DNS-based. I'm not sure if we have Dane working.
I think we do.
Okay.
I think.
But they're more or less the same. They're a mechanism for finding keys without using a key server, but using other kinds of servers. I think we shouldn't get too much into it because we don't have so much time, but we can talk about it later. And they're also not full replacements because they don't convey signature information.
Yeah.
They strip signatures.
Yeah, it was a question that actually came up in the last few months, and we were able to turn around and go, no, we've done that. The other one that comes up, and this is sort of less of a question these days, but I'm going to include it anyway, is elliptic curve keys. Historically, we were, DSA keys, and then we moved to RSA when we wanted bigger keys. And elliptic curve is the new hotness, and Andy in the audience will tell us that all of this is going away because, hey, quantum. But this has been supported in GPG2 in Stretch onwards. We've been quite happy to accept the keys for several years, right? Once we transitioned to actually running on Stretch for all of the keyring-maint work we did, we're quite happy to accept the keys. There are, and I did this check yesterday, 20 keys in the keyring at the minute across all of the keyrings that are ECC as their primary key, and that generally means that all of their subkeys are ECC as well. And there are 32 keys which do not have an ECC primary key but have ECC subkeys. So that's actually higher than I thought. I knew we had a handful, but that's good. It is at your own risk. You do get to chase service owners if things break. However, the one thing that I was aware of there was still an issue with was voting, because Kurt was still using GPG1, but I'm reliably informed.
I have been using an ECC key only for 3 years, and I have been able to vote. So, I mean, I have been able to vote. Maybe it was you, but I mean, I haven't been had to chase any service owners. But if I had a problem, I would have to.
Yeah, as I say, there's certainly a desire in every service owner we talk to that it should work. It was just that they hadn't seen an ECC key in the keyring, and therefore they hadn't been able to. This was pretty much the talk I gave 3 years ago. I haven't had anyone complain at us since that time. As I say, the only one I knew there was still an issue with was voting. I'm told that's fixed. I have no reason to believe there's a problem with it. I'm going to transition to ECC at some point in the next year, finally. The other problem we've had recently is that the Keyserver network is sick, right? There have been various attacks on key servers that don't validate signatures in the past few years. There have been various attempts to fix that and various different approaches to fixing that, but it has meant that we now have no coherent, federated, reliable key server network that can hand us signatures, right? Because we are Debian, we care about the signatures on the key, especially for a new developer. If you're coming to the project and saying, hey, I want to join the project, and you've got your 2 signatures from Debian developers, if we can't get those from a key server, we've got a problem, right? So the key servers that drop signatures, fine for getting the key material, not so good for the purpose we want about the Web of Trust. So currently, NM has settled on using keyserver.ubuntu.com. It's been, as far as we can tell, mostly reliable, and there's a good chance we know who to shake if there's a problem. I don't actually know.
It's mostly reliable, although it's not well connected to the biggest part of the key server network.
It's not well connected, but it's one we know we can hit and get the answer from.
But we know about it. Yeah, we were just talking, maybe we will implement a key server run by us. That's, I think, what we would be doing in next year, but we still haven't laid out the plans for that. There are many technical issues to check with that.
Yeah, but just generally, it always feels a little bit awkward to send people to an Ubuntu site to send the key to join Debian, and maybe we should be running something under a Debian domain, and then we can add a few more extra controls on exactly how it is and sync it as well as we can with the rest of the network. So I think that's something we need to look into, but it is something to be aware of as a general user that, especially as someone coming new into Debian, keyserver.ubuntu.com is where we pull keys from. If you're an existing person with a key in the keyring, you can send it to keyring.debian.org, but it only accepts keys from keys that are already in it, right? So we'll accept updated signatures, we'll accept updated expiry times, we'll accept new UUIDs, all of those things. If you've changed your key in that way, just send it to our key server and that'll be picked up in the next update. But if you're not
key updates. Not migrating to a new key.
Yeah, not migrating to a new key. That's the thing. And then these are the resources. So we have a website, keyring.debian.org. It's not regularly updated, but then not a lot of changes. There's a couple of interesting bits on that about keyring flow. So there's been confusion over the years that we have a Debian Keyring package that is in the archive. This is not what any of the actual infrastructure in Debian pays attention to. What Debian infrastructure actually uses is an rsync from keyring.debian.org, and there is the set of keyrings and a signed set of hashes for those keyrings. So if you ever want to know what the active keyring is, it lives on that. It's all documented on keyring.debian.org, but that flow has confused people, understandably so, in the past, where they go, hey, you haven't uploaded the keyring, when are you going to do that? And it's like, well, we don't always upload the keyring every month, but we do make a new active keyring every month, so that's the thing. Second line is how you send your updated key to the key server. If you want to talk to us, we generally use RT. The reason for that is quite often what we're talking about is a compromised key or some issue with the key. Therefore, our workflow can't be public on bugs.debian.org. So RT is the way we track everything. You need to include Debian RT in the subject, otherwise things, and put something descriptive in the subject line so we can actually work out how much we have to prioritize it without having to get into the depths of the mail. Oh, and the other irritating thing is it needs to be inline signed. RT mangles PGP MIME signatures, so hey.
Talking with RT it's quite opaque. It has quite a bit of dark arts in it. It usually works for us because we have done it for 10 years, or 15 years, but it is a pain point.
Yeah, but as I say, we need that ability. And the other thing is we end up passing tickets to DSA, right, for some things. So it actually putting it all in there and being able to pass it around helps. So that's why it's RT and not bugs.debian.org. But it is there. The final thing is all of our work is done in Git, right? So you can actually go and look at the hacky scripts we use and don't judge us too harshly, but they do the job. Equally, every single key that's in the keyring lives within Git, right? So we actually have a single file for every key. You can see the history of when we've modified that, when it's gone in by going and browsing the Git history. The website is also in Git and under that salsa repo as well. So there's 2 repos under that team thing. We're not very good about accepting merge requests, but by all means submit them or suggest them.
We don't have many merge requests.
We don't have many.
Or we are that bad that I never noticed them.
There have been a couple for the website that I have eventually got around to merging.
But if you have a merge request for the script, please send them.
Yeah. And I think that's all I've got, and we've got just a little bit of time for questions. Did you have anything I missed?
Let's see what the dear audience has to say. Yay!
Just a comment on the voting thing. The confirmations are still sent using GPT-1, so the ECC key owners don't get them.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I never noticed I don't get a confirmation. I mean, I have checked my votes on the tally.
Right, but you can't actually check your vote on the
right.
tally.
And now that votes are private...
You don't get the nonce.
Right.
So,
now that votes are private, that's a point we should probably discuss with Kurt.
So the secretary has issues with GPT-2 for sending confirmations, so if someone knowledgeable with GPT can help, it will be useful, I think.
That's a good point.
It just doesn't get said enough. We really appreciate all the work you guys do. Thank you.
Any criticism, please, or...
I've been trying.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank you again, and then let's end the talk here.
Thank you very much.